So, Father Michael Byrnes, delighted to sit down to have a chat with you. We've been very good friends for a long time. Really looking forward to having a chat with you just about this project that I'm doing. So, Parish Priest of Portumna. Yeah?
Yeah, Parish Priest Portumna now since officially the 6th of January 2017. I came the evening before, and moving into a new house or moving into a new community in midwinter, not the best time of the year
I can imagine.
to do that. But still then the spring comes and yes, it all worked out. And now come January, 9 years.
Very good.
Seen a lot of changes, and change is never easy for people and for myself, but that was one of the challenges coming into the position of being parish priest here in Portumna. I'm the first parish priest in 203 years not to have an assistant. What that brings with it, then you can carve out your own kind of a pathway, work with people, and as I said to them, I've come to make my home among you, and I'm here to prepare you a journey of change. But change is not always bad. We just fear because we're out of the usual and the routine. But then there's life to change too. I think the seasons, if we have a sense of them, we actually are the visible sign of that. That autumn does not die easy from the trees of falling leaves, and yet you come into the winter and the trees against a grey background, the branches. No wonder it is artists and literists, how would you say, haven.
Yeah. It's 2017. You came here January 2017. So how long are you a priest now?
Last June, the 11th, 42 years.
Wow, yeah.
I was ordained at 23. You're supposed to be 25. Don't get the idea. Somehow I skipped a few courses or a few issues or areas I had to do. No, I did the full 6 years. But I had to get permission, special permission to be ordained.
Okay.
And that came through.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So kind of bring you way back.
Yeah.
So Father Michael Byrne, born in
London, a twin, Margaret, and we're born at Queen Charlotte's Hospital, and it was one of the hottest summers in decades, 1959, and we were in a hurry. We came 9 weeks early.
Okay.
And we were 2 pounds 2 ounces each.
Right. My God.
And the incubators had come in, and that's why I'm here today, and
Well, 2 pounds 2 ounces, that's a challenge from the start.
Yeah. And from Mum and Dad, yes, because Mum is from Kilbeggan, County Westmeath, and my dad is from Oranmore in Galway, and they met in London. Dad was over there working, and Mum came over for her brother's wedding, and Dad and her brother were friends, and that's how they met.
Right.
And that was July, and then January 61, 22nd, my brother George was born, and within a month we were home.
Back to Ireland.
Back home to Ireland.
And back to Dublin.
We first came back to Westmeath.
To Kilbeggan.
Yeah. And stayed with Granny. And Granny had Mam, obviously, because she had 3 children, very young. And then Dad eventually got the house in Palmerstown in County Dublin.
And what age were you when you arrived back to Kilbeggan?
It was February 61. So I was a year and a half. Margaret and myself, were a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we got to Dublin then by the summer, into Palmerstown, 109 Culmore Road. And we were there until 66, May. And then my dad was a carpenter and his business. and he bought the show house in Lucan, and it was Hill House Estate, 191, and it's now known as Lucan Heights.
Lucan Heights and Dublin.
Yeah.
Lucan, yeah.
And I absolutely loved living in Lucan. I remember as a kid being very happy. We went to Moy Park College in Clondalkin. At that time you got the bus, and I remember it being dark in the morning getting on the bus to go the 4 miles and to the big school.
Yeah.
And yeah, very, very happy memories of that time.
Yeah. And you were there until what age then? You lived in Lucan?
10, just
10.
before my 10th birthday. And then Mum said we're going to London. So my dad worked for Bob Carroll in Lucan in the bar, as well as doing his own business, and we knew it well. And so we packed up. I remember it was a lovely sunny morning. We packed up and we went to my Aunt Noni's the night before, and she was in Santry. And then we went to Dundleary and we got the boat. I remember going down the motorway. I'd never seen a motorway in my life. And I looked out and I was just speaking out loud. And I said, well, at least the cows are the same. And I remember my and dad bursting out laughing, and I'm looking at them from the back seat, wondering what were they laughing about. That's what I thought. And we got to London, and it was such a shock. We went to my godparents' apartment for maybe a week before we took over to the pub. My dad had then realised my father had taken over a pub in the south side of the city in the Old Kent Road called the Duke of Kent. And it was bombed out during the war, but the pub was there. It was a huge building, blackened. And I said, I knew then all the nice things we had in Lucan were not there. And it was a big shock. I remember the 1st of September, my mum was on her knees doing my uniform, my tie. And I said to her, Mammy, when are we going home? And she said, no, this is it. Oh, no, I said, it can't be. Billy McGarrett doesn't know where I am. Billy McGarrett was my friend at school in Moy Park College. And I remember I cried all day long. I cried going to school. I cried during school, cried coming home. That's when it hit me that we weren't returning home as I saw it. And I made my mind up there and then that when I finished school, I was coming straight home. So for the next 6 years, every summer, come June, we'd take them to school, brought home to Galway, Kilbeggan. And when I did what was then the O-levels, I did them in the June. And by September, I was back home for good. Yeah. I was just 18.
How was school in London?
Overall, I found it very difficult because they taught things very differently. Like, say, times tables. They do them a different way to the way we would have done them, which utterly confused me. And I never recovered from that. I can't do numbers in my head, even to this day. It was a huge school, 1,000 boys. And I came from Moy Park College, which was a small school, with maybe 200-300. All these nationalities, which I'd never been exposed to.
Had it a Catholic ethos?
Oh, it was Catholic school,
yeah.
Comprehensive school. St. Thomas the Apostle, St. Mary's Road, in Peckham. It could be rough in parts, but I generally kept to myself. I remember when I did come down the first day or two when we got to London, and they sent me down to get some cabbage, to bring home. And the guy was there, and I couldn't understand his accent. And he said, "Cabbage, oh, you want your greens?" I went, "Oh, no, it's just the cabbage." He started laughing at me. "That's all right, Paddy." "Oh, no," I said, "my name's Michael." So in school, for the first few years, yes, I kept to myself, but it was difficult because then the bombing started in London and England. And by the time I was 14, there was the Birmingham pub bombings. And I remember it was a Thursday, and it was 22nd of November, 74. And I joined the St. John Ambulance. And that night we were coming back, and I saw the big televisions in the windows for the television shop that they sold, the TVs. And two of my friends were with me, but when I went to go away, I went into his chest, and he just looked down at me, and he just said, excuse me, you bastard, and walked away. Because I said, isn't that terrible? And the other said, don't worry, he doesn't know what he's saying. That was the first time that I began to receive, even from among my friends, the true feeling, about us as Irish people.
And you were still quite young.
We were 14, and I never lost my accent. And in school, generally, I didn't get too much trouble, but coming home on the bus, they heard the accent, and I would have got, I would have got a box into the face, and they ran down and left me bleeding. And then my family got threatening phone calls as well, and my dad, to the bar. So it was a difficult time. Then you come home here for the summer, and they say, oh, you're English, you're living in England. They had no idea of the difficulty it was for us. Now, that wasn't all the time. That was only some of the time. But it made you wary. All right. And then when things would really be bad, tended to stay at home. So coming home there for summers, it was kind of freedom.
Yeah.
Down to my
Would
grandparents.
summers mainly be in Kilbeggan or down Galway?
Equal.
Equal. Yeah. Which did you prefer?
Actually, would you believe it? I think I loved Kilbeggan for one reason. I was very close to my grandmother. This is her wedding ring.
Okay.
And we were very close. I'm the eldest grandson. And I just loved being with her. And she was a very calm lady. And the qualities, she'd say, be under compliment to nobody, conduct yourself when you're out, the old phrases. And when I had my head down like a teenager, get your head up, what have you to be ashamed of? But never think you're better than anybody, but never think you're less than anyone. So she was a very grounded person. But Granny Byrnes had died when I was 12. And I spent...
So Granny Byrnes is in Galway.
And I spent a whole summer with her when I was 11 going on 12. And I really loved that. And again with Granny with her as well. But then I'd help out on the farm, and I enjoyed that as well. Yeah. And you'd help out the neighbours in Kilbeggan doing sailing the hay, particularly the bales of hay or the cocks of hay. And yeah, I just loved it. And
So you probably always knew you were going to come back to Ireland.
But there's no question in my mind
Yeah.
that I was returning
Yeah.
after school was over. Yeah. So I often see my time now looking back. It was like being in school away from home, and then when the holidays came, he came home. Yeah. And of all my family, my twin included, they integrated better. And Barry was 3 when he went over. And sure, I remember, and I would have told you this here in Lochray, when Barry come home and he'd be Barry speaking, and I'd look and say, what is he saying? Because the Cockney accent was so strong, I didn't understand, what he'd be saying at times. But I never lost my, I think it was stubbornness. I never lost my accent, and I never wanted to be anywhere during the summer than back home. My mother would say to me, do you not get bored? You're a teenager on your own with Granny. I went, no. And
Very
I
happy.
didn't. Yeah.
So, from school then, so for you to come back to Ireland, did you decide that you were going to have a career? Was it always going to be the priesthood, or were you thinking of something else? And I suppose the question I'm trying to get to there is, was the opportunity of becoming a priest something that brought you back to Ireland, or was it just natural? No,
the opportunity to be a priest, no, because the Catholic Church is worldwide, and indeed they did everything to persuade me to go for the Archdiocese of Southwark, which is South London, and the seminary was just maybe 20 miles away, but I had absolutely no desire whatsoever to remain in England, no matter what that would be. As a priest, a lay person, that simply was not an option in my head. I was mad to join the army.
Oh.
From
one extreme to the other.
That's what my dad said. Until the age maybe 14, up to 14, but I wanted to be a captain in the army here at home. and which is kind of ridiculous. When I look back, it was kind of just a notion of myself because I love military things, military history, and so forth. And I thought maybe I might go and do hotel management was another thing I was thinking about. And anyway, when I was 13 years of age, I got the opportunity to go to Rome with the school around the 15th of February, 73. And we had an audience that time, a general audience with Pope Paul VI. And that had a profound effect on me. I was blown away really by the experience. I had been thinking not of priesthood, but I knew I had faith. Because when I was in Moyle Park College, during lunch hour, when Billy McGarrett mightn't be there, I'd sneak out of the college, and I was 8, and I'd go up the road and cross a busy road and go into the church. And it's that stone church in Clondalkin, and had a beautiful high altar, as I could describe it now. And I'd just stay at the back, say a prayer, and just look at the altar in awe. And then I'd sneak back in to the college. So I had that feeling, even though we weren't an overly religious family. We'd go to Mass when I was younger, but when we went to England, by the time I was 13, I was the only one going to Mass. And I was serving. But went to Rome, as I said, and I came out from the audience and I said, I'm going to be a priest. I told nobody, because I felt I'd be rejected by my friends and ridiculed. And I didn't tell my family. So I kept that quiet really for 2.5 years. And it was my dad I actually approached first then and said, I'm thinking about the priesthood. He said, why? Well, I said, it's a secure job and I'll have a roof over my head. Get out of here, he said, and don't come back, he said, until you've thought more seriously about it. So 6 months later, I went back again and said, I think I'd like to serve God and serve him in the church. Okay. And he says, I won't lift a hand to help you. He said, if I want to drive you anywhere, no problem. But the rest is to you. And I remember thinking, well, I won't say on camera what I thought, but I wasn't impressed. And eventually then I told my mother. And she said, that's okay. And I said, so you don't mind? No, if that's what you want, it's your choice. But I wrote to my granny before I told her I said anything to anybody. So Granny Bannon in Kilbeggan. And I thought I'd get a letter back saying, this is great news. It'll be more in your line now to focus on your studies. But if it's God's will, it will happen. But you just study. Gran kept me grounded. So there was no such thing as a pedestal in our house. And eventually then I was in school by this, he was originally from Africa, but he was born and reared in London. And he said to me, this big guy, we used to have assembly every day and have our prayers. He said, you're going to be a priest. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you are, because I see the way you would bang your chest when we pray. And then I became defensive. So what if I am, No, I'm just saying it. And I think that shows you how afraid I was of rejection, that I was trying to hide it. But I made my mind up, and then I made when I did tell Dad I'm thinking of being a priest, that's when he said, because he knew about I love the army, one extreme to the other, he says. So I think they thought it was just a fad that would fade. But we came and we went to Holy Cross College in Dublin, the Dublin Seminary, and they said I needed more points. So I had to go back again for one more year. I'd done the O-levels and went to Southwark College to study to get more points. That was an international college. So I met people from Pakistan, Iran, the Caribbean, Africa. And it was a fascinating introduction to the world and to different religions. because the Pakistan student invited us to join for an inter-prayer, interfaith. I'd never known it like this. And I went. And it was the first time I ever saw a Muslim at prayer and showing how to pray, the way they prayed, and to talk. And I was known as the Catholic, presence. It was the first time I was conscious of being Catholic. I was 17. And I remember they have this perfume, to put it on it. Oh, it was real strong. It's like worse than incense, And I went up, my mother said, "Your eyes are very glazed." Oh, I said, no. I didn't tell her I was interfaith or this, but it was this, whatever they'd given me. And that made me very open to other faiths and not being afraid. If you're secure in your own, you don't fear anybody else's. And my father had two things, a mantra: education and travel. Educate yourself and travel to broaden your mind. And Dad left school when he was 14. And that's what I've done my whole life, travelling and to educate myself. And I'm going back to Ireland, if that's what you want. And then over the next year or so, when I was saying we're going to Holy Cross College, Clonliff, and Mam wasn't there, but Dad came, and we went. But I remember we were home again, and she said, what you want to do, you do, but never think that you can never leave, or never think that this door will never be open to you. You'll always have a home. And they put no pressure on me whatsoever, either for, or if they had, what you might say, apprehensions. But I did hear from her friend, Mabel, my mother was worried. She thought I was far too young, I was innocent, a bit naive, and she was afraid that I would get hurt. But I heard that from Mabel. Now, I always looked younger than I was. I mean, it says it all that when I my first week in the seminary, or in St. Patrick's in Thurles, I walked down the avenue and the president was coming up with another priest visiting. And the other priest said to me, "Hello, young laddie, how is your first year in secondary school going?" and I got a bit red, and I said, and the president looked at him, and I said, well, no, Father. I said, I've started my training here. And the priest looked at the president, must just say, "You can't be serious." And he said, "You're taking them in nappies now." But that was made known to me clearly. But my mother, really behind the scenes, our local parish priest, and Canon Clemens from the cathedral, which was up the road where I'd serve on a Saturday, they were coming to visit. But I know my mum had primed them, trying to get them to persuade me to stay in London, not to return to Ireland. And I wouldn't. And the only time I ever saw my frustrated, he said, you're very stubborn. Because he couldn't understand why would I want to come home and live in Ireland. Because she loved London and loved the opportunities that London that presents itself as a big city. But I didn't see it that way, and I wasn't coming home to a romantic idea either. I just felt all of me was grounded here. My identity, I felt, was here. Margaret, my twin, God rest her, when I was, I think, again, maybe 15, 16, there was a single came out, A Stranger on the Shore by Acapulco. It's a musical, just a rendition. And she bought it for me as a present. I remember playing it and she looking, and now I look back, did she see me as like that? The stranger on the shore, where we were. And I still have that record, that Margaret had an intuition. She had a far better intuition than I ever had. She was the far more the one clued in of the two of us as twins. She was far more clued in that sense of emotions where I buried them, but she'd show them.
Was she happy with you?
Yeah, I told her.
Yeah.
I had no problem in telling her. She said, whatever you want to do, you know.
But of course, you'd be moving to Ireland and she'd be staying
in
London.
in London. She found that very hard.
Yeah.
So when I was leaving that Sunday, the 25th of September 77, Margaret and a friend, they were together, and Katie Morgan was her name, and we were kind of like boyfriend girlfriend for a while. And Margaret left. She wouldn't say goodbye, but then she wrote me a lovely letter which I still have, saying why she couldn't say goodbye to me. She found it just too hard.
So Margaret was your twin sister, and what about your brothers? How do they feel about?
Well, Jared is a year and a half younger than me, and he felt from the very beginning I should be certified. He thought I was throwing my life away, and it was the only arguments we had. He could not understand why would I be doing such a stupid thing. Barry was only 10 when I was leaving home, you know, and so I was sad leaving because Barry was so young. But eventually Jared came around.
And so then you arrived into Thurles.
Yeah.
So Thurles wasn't your first choice, though, was it?
Not at all. I didn't even know where Thurles was. I remember it was in August, around this time in 77. I'd been to UCD for the psychological assessment, which Holy Cross College set up for that I had to do. And I had 2 interviews with the authorities in the college, and then we came down and they said to ring on Friday, and we were in Kilbeggan, so I walked up to the outskirts of the town to the phone box, and I rang to get the results, and the results came back and they said you have every qualification, every quality to be a priest except the academic, so we can't accept you. And
so this is Holy Cross College in
Dublin. Drumcondra. And I was absolutely, they use it today, but I was absolutely devastated, because I had nothing else. I'd done 2 years, I did everything what they asked, and then they said no. So I had no idea where I was going. I knew I did not want to return to England, but what do I do now? So I came back and told Mama, they knew by my face, and I was very upset, and went up the field and cried, and Mum and Dad didn't know what to do. My father was very angry because he'd known Father Owen Sweeney, the president of the college, in the 60s in Wales, when he went over to work for a while, and he was the chaplain there for the Irish. And so we left Granny on the Saturday to head to Emily in Tipperary, see my godmother, and I'd never been to Tip. And of course we told her, and went to Mass Sunday. Monday morning, Nana was coming down, let's call her Nana, and she said to me, the curate father would like to see you, because his house was literally just down the end of the Borean, at 11 o'clock. So I said, Dad, will you come? So Dad and myself went down, and he said, told the story that, he said, why don't you try Thurles? And we looked and said, where's Thurles? And he told us we're going to Tip Town and you'll see the sign for Thurles. So we did. And of course, we're like the hillbillies. We all clambered into the one car. Off to Thurles we went. And we went up, turned up the avenue, the long avenue, and all these cars were going up and down. And we drove up, and these lads got out and they were in black suits, black ties, white shirts. Said this is like a funeral. And I was in a green cardigan with white stripes on my on the arms, and jeans. So they were giving me real strange looks. I didn't realise that my future class was just entering that day. We asked to see the president. He came down and he took a look too, went up, and Dad, when we were in his sitting room, the president went to say something, and my father just said, Father, if you don't mind a moment. And of course, Mum and I looked at Dad, because Dad would never say anything really. He said, I'd like you to know that we're here today He said, because of Michael. But Michael has done everything on his own. Everything. He said, none of us have helped him. He has been doing this, pursuing this for the last 2 years. And I looked at my father, and then I understood. When he said, I won't help you, I'll drive you, but I'll do nothing for you. I understood then that he wanted that I could stand on my own 2 feet. Nobody had in any way influenced me, that this was my choice. And I looked at him and I loved him. I said, I just never felt such warmth and love for him at that very moment. And the president said, oh, I can see Michael's very eager. So he said about Moyle Park College and about what happened in Dublin. He said, well, you know, we have a spiritual director coming, he said, to on Wednesday, tomorrow, on Wednesday. I'd like for you, Michael, to see him, you know. And he said, and it's Brother Eamon. And my dad said, is that Brother Eamon from Moyle Park College? And he said, yes. He said, that was Michael's principal in National School. And we hadn't met since I left school. And I came on Wednesday, spoke with the father, came back in, Mum and Dad were chatting. I thought it would never end, you know. And then he turns out of it and says, Michael, and I bolted up, you've been found a suitable candidate for entry. When can you come? I couldn't believe it. That last Friday, my world was falling. And here we were Wednesday, I was accepted. And then my mother intervened. And said, well, Father, she said, Michael has to tie up a number of things back home and sort stuff out. Of course. So he said, will we say, he said, the last Monday of September. We agreed. And we walked out and my nan was there, my godmother. Well, how'd you get on? And I looked at her and I thought, no way. Oh, don't worry, you know. And then I turned away, I got in. And she went, well, you bold brat, you know. And the women went off to Hayes' hotel. My dad and myself went to get something. And the women went inside. What I didn't know wasn't the 2 of them were bawling crying. Why is Monday the 26th such an important day to me? On Sunday the 26th of September 76, Dad returned back to London. He'd been over home and he was with Granny in Kilbeggan. And she asked him to go to the Martin de Porres shop in Dublin, which I'm sure he wasn't impressed with, to get a statue of St. Martin de Porres, because I did devotion to him like my 2 grandmothers. And I wrote on the bottom of it, Sunday the 26th of September 76, from Granny Bannon to me. Exactly a year later, I walked in the doors to begin my training for the priesthood. And whose birthday was it? It was Pope Paul VI's 80th birthday, the very Pope that we had an audience with General in 1973, in February 15th. And here we were, and now I was beginning. And I settled into Thurles. The studies were hard. I mean, we were doing in our first year psychology, sociology, philosophy. They did anything but talking about God or about the scriptures, you know. The humanities, all of these subjects. But I wouldn't be able to keep up, but I had very good friends that could write faster and I'd get their notes. But once I absorbed the notes, I did okay. I'm an average student. I'm not an academic. I always had to work hard to succeed in my examinations and in the projects that we were given. And that was the same in national school. I was always in the C plus area, that level, you know, which is interesting because when we went to England, you know, you got to A to E, right? And I was always in the C's category in class and levels. And I was put into D. And this was secondary school, 1D, 2D, 3E. And then we were so stupid, they made another level, and that was F, and I went to 4F. in that period, that was I was not at all happy. I literally was a recluse until I was 14. I wouldn't go out. But I joined St. John Ambulance when I was 14. And I had gone into F4F. But once I made my mind to be a priest, I went from 4F to 5C. But nobody, teachers objected. How could I go from 4F to 5C in 1 year? Because now I was focused.
You had
I
a goal.
had a goal, I had a purpose. And had I got that purpose earlier, academically, I might have done a little bit better. Not much more though. And I got through the seminary. At times it was tough. It certainly was. They would test you, and they seemed to pick on me for a reason I don't know. Even my own class said this is not right. But I was determined. And you know, I now know your character is chiselled by challenge. But the good things make life and that challenge more than bearable.
And then, what year were you ordained?
Well, I was to be ordained a deacon on the 30th of April 82. But on Monday of Holy Week, the president came to my room. The president never came to our room, ever. When he opened the door, I stood up and I got such a shock, because the moment he's standing in my door and has never done that in 5 years. Secondly, I said, Byrnes, you're not going to be ordained. No drama. Keep calm. And he sat down and he said, we looked at you and we believe that you're not ready for ordination. I know I was young. I was 22. And he said, you will have your day, but not this time. Now, I don't want any, he said, drama about this. And he left. And when he left and I went out the door, all the lads were outside their doors watching him go by, you know. The hardest thing was to ring home, because they booked their flights, to tell them that I'm not being ordained. My father was furious. He said, I'll go to Rome, you know. But Mam calmed him down. She said, they're testing him. It was a real test. It was a very real test. And it was one of the most loneliest periods of my life. And my classmate asked me, would I sing at the ordination, of which I should be ordained. But the college was really stunned, you know, because overall I was a good student, you know.
Was there many priests being ordained that year?
That year there was 13 in our class.
And were you the only one that was?
I was the only one, yeah. And now there was Tim Peacock, but he had changed diocese, so the change wouldn't be complete in time for him to be ordained. And he was from England and he was a late vocation. He was in his 40s. So anyway, look, we got over the day, and my granddad was still alive at the time in Galway, Papa. And but I arrived back in September. I walked up the steps, and as my head came up the steps, the lads saw me and they called me by my nickname. I said, I know you're back. Yep. And the president said, well, it's quite obvious, you know, you're determined to be ordained. I wanted to say to him, I think being here for over 5 years has shown that, you know. But the sad thing was, on the 22nd of September, Grandad died.
So you never see?
He never saw me. And I was ordained on the 28th of November, just 9 weeks later. Which is quite ironic, because Granny Bannon died on the 6th of February 81, and the president gave out the date for my ordination as a deacon, the 28th of November 82, Granny's birthday. And she'd gone, and it was at 8 o'clock in the morning, because the Archbishop had to go somewhere. So the lads felt that this was just another slap in the face. No ordinations take place at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was the only one that nobody could remember in the college when that happened. I was 5 years, it had never happened. And so it was just like the president having one last. But I never held it against him, but my godmother didn't like him from the moment she saw him 5 years earlier. But I was ordained that morning, and Mam and Margaret, Jared was in New Zealand, and Barry was there as well. And it was one of the loveliest occasions of my life. My first confessions were not in the parish. I arrived on a Friday, and my first mass then was Sunday, and Bishop Cassidy introduced me. And I remember the big seat, and Monsignor Gordon was a big man, he could fill it. But the seat was so deep that I had to pull myself up, but my legs went up then like this. Bishop Cassidy introduced me. He said, "You might look young, but there's no clobber on him." And unknown to myself, I crossed my legs and my legs were doing this. And one of the people came in after and said, "Well, you were like a little lad in a big chair," And my first person I had to go to who had died, where I had to give the sacraments, was that afternoon. Because they'd gone, that afternoon they'd gone to, I think it was the semi-final, the All-Ireland semi-final. So I was on my own. And my classmate who was over in Kiltormer came over. And this is Friday, this is Sunday afternoon. And I was petrified of the mental hospital in Ballinasloe. And a call came, so I had to go. And went up anyway with my card and the whole thing. And he kept locking the doors behind me. And the more he locked, the more I became very agitated inside. Petrified is the word. And we eventually got down to the basement, and there was this person on this slab. And next thing in the corner of my eye, I saw him going out, the attendant leaving. And I shouted him, "Where are you going? Come back here, don't leave on my own." And he came back as much to say, "What's up with you?" I had never seen the dead body. I saw Granny, yes, but I'd never seen on a slab. Yeah. And no one trained us in college for this. And I came back and I told Bernard what happened. I went, "Whoa," And the first confessions then was Tuesday at lunchtime. "Are we all right for confessions?" he said, "for Thursday now at 11 o'clock. And Monsignor was at the top table, then there was Father Nocton and myself and Father Geraghty across the way. And he said, "In St. Bridget's." And like that, I burst out laughing, And I laughed, and then I knew this was the wrong time. And I went, and Monsignor wasn't known for his humour. And he turned around and said, "What's funny, Michael? What, confessions in a mental hospital?" Like this. And he said, "Yes, that's what we do." And I felt that timing,
So from Ballinasloe to Loughrea, is that right?
Yeah, that was a big surprise. Ballinasloe is so big, it took time it takes time to get used to it. Because I was also helping out in Garbally Colleges every Wednesday for the students and confessions that time with Father Costello. And we had the novena, and that was huge. So it was a real, what you might say, hitting the ground running. I mean, busy place, to say the least. That's 42 years ago. And I mean, the churches would be full, the confessions would be for hours, and the novenas, I had 46 First Friday calls of my own each month, and they expected them all to be done in a day, which you couldn't. You'd have to do them in a couple of days. But I loved it. I got into it. And then we knew the rumours were out that the bishop was calling people to his house in Loughrea. So we were saying to Jerry Geraghty, "Well, you're here now since 76, so this is 84, 8 years, so." And Jerry really thought he was going. And we had coffee that morning in early September, and Mary Phelan was Bishop's secretary. So she came out of the kitchen and I was going into the dining room and she was halfway up the stairs and leant over. Oh, she says, Father Michael. I went, yes, ma'am. The bishop would like to see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I was stunned. So I went up to her room, I immediately rang my classmate, Father Costello in Kiltormer. I said, I've been summoned to Cooreen tomorrow. So have I. So we weren't even 2 years there. So anyway, we went, dressed up in the suit that time, and we went over. And I was in first. And he says, I don't know why he was.
So this is Bishop
Cassidy.
Yeah.
And how are you, Mikey? He says to me like this.
I thought you said I was University called you that.
Yeah, no, he would say, and he says, do you know why you're here? And cheeky, I said, well, I know I'm not on a social call. He said, no, he said, no, I'm bringing you to Loughrea. Oh, and he says, because I want you to build up the ceremonies in the cathedral, he said, and with the youth. And now you speak with Father Stankert, he said, the administrator. I know you have holidays coming, and you can arrange with him, and he knows you'll have your holidays and come back fresh. So I walked out, and Costello was there doing me. I went, and then Costello went in, and he found out where he was going. And so I arrived in Loughrea fully on the 7th of October, 40 years ago. This October. I never knew that Loughrea would become such an important place in my life, for the rest of my life and for the future of my family.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, look at within 2 weeks I had a circle of friends around me that I'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
Friends that have been with me to this day. And within 6 weeks, I was completely settled in Loughrea. And I remember Father Stankert one day, I was coming down the stairs. I was coming into the door, running upstairs, and he called me. He said, Michael, are you happy here? I said, I am. Well, he said, you've certainly livened up the place. Because young people were coming up to my room, coming into the house, and we were involved in so many different things. And I was finding my way. But Loughrea was smaller than Ballinasloe, so it was easier to become part of it, as I found. Absolutely loved being near the lake and the walks and having so many young people, and I felt young. I felt young like I'd never felt young before, because I was always an older teenager and adolescent, because I was always around people way older than me. Now I was with people younger than me and the same age, and we seemed to click, and I was surprised that they just liked me for me, because they weren't treating me like a priest. They were treating me for me. And
would this have had any, so with your own faith, did coming to Loughrea help you as a priest, do you think, and help you with your faith?
It's certainly in Loughrea, as regards being in ministry, all these openings. Now, the downside, of course, was that you got involved in so much. You were doing maybe a 16-hour day, 5 days a week at least, but you didn't feel it because you were fully into it. My faith has never been dependent on the priesthood. From a very young age, I would have said my own prayers, because we didn't pray as a family. As I said, before we moved to London, we would have gone to Mass as a family. But religion was never spoken of, either positively or negatively, in the house. You always showed respect, but it was never discussed. My grandparents never discussed, but my Granny Byrnes had incredible faith, and Granny Bannon the same. But by the time I was 12, 13, I had a small little record player. I had what we call the Palestrina choir, singing these Latin hymns and motets and so forth. And I would close my eyes, the Panis Angelicus and all of those other beautiful hymns by Bach and these composers that I got to know because of the church music that I'd heard on television. And I'd stay in my bedroom and I'd play it, and I could be there for 30, 40 minutes. And I'd say Our Father, Hail Mary, glory, pray for my parents, grandparents, and then I'd say nothing. And I'd just listen to the music carrying me. And I made a little altar for myself. And later then I'd pretend to practice the Mass. And that carried my faith. And I always liked going to Mass. I wouldn't miss Mass. And even when I went to England, the big shock was I came from full churches, people my own age, to 10 years of age, the church was virtually empty. It had older people, no young people. And that was a huge shock to my system as well. So while I felt a belonging to the church, it was the church that I'd left in Ireland, the community, the people gathered, and the people especially that loved going to Kilbeggan Mass and Organ, because everybody, the outside granddad and my uncles, and they'd be all chatting and so forth after Mass. And in Kilbeggan you meet the neighbours and all my own age group, you know. And I loved that. Gone. That was gone. So I felt my country was gone and my church was gone when we went over to England. But I kept my faith. But one of the downsides then was we never prayed together as a family or talked about faith or religion. My father would not allow religion to be discussed in the bar or politics. And yet when we had to sing a song, I'd sing the Ave Maria. My father would be there, quite proud of that. But when I got to thirds, I didn't know the rosary. I didn't know how to say the Angelus. I said, if they find out, I'm going to be kicked out. So this was the pressure I was under. No wonder I fainted the first week, and I had a little book under. I was trying to hide that, that I was actually the imposter here. Because all of these 75, 80 lads at the college, they all were going to Mass, their families were going to Mass, they knew the rosary, they knew all the prayers and everything. I only knew the prayers of the Mass. So I felt like I was the imposter, and if the president finds out that number one, my family don't go to Mass, and number two, I have an idea of the rosary, the prayers are, he'll ask me to leave. So I was hiding my secret, But my faith, I'd always at night, I'd have Granny's book and the prayers, Martin de Porres, novenas and so forth. So my faith is something that was nourished as I went through college, and it expanded my understanding of my faith. But my priesthood was not dependent on giving me my faith.
Would it be fair to say that people with a good faith are happier people?
Yes, in the main. It depends. Faith is a very personal thing. If you use faith as a crutch, it'll only carry you for so long. Because faith is just what you've described. It's meant to make you joyful, not in the sense of dancing outside in the front lawn, although some do. Faith is meant to give you the word I use is a serenity and a contentment in the inside. That whatever life will throw at you, like Christ in the boat in the storm, the lads were petrified because they could only see the storm. But they didn't look to the Lord at all. And yet when he calmed them, they didn't know what to do either. So even when it was calm, they were still in a storm in themselves. That faith carries you to a refreshment each day for life. And faith is meant to be celebrated in that in the happy times, you're saying, thank you, Lord, for all this day. Thank you, Lord, for this moment. That's faith. Lord, give me the help to bear the burden. I don't want to do this. Why do I have to carry it? But it's the same Lord. It's the same boat of the people in faith. And faith is meant to give meaning to what you do.
And with respect to your own privacy, has your faith ever been tested?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. When you think you're losing everything, it's one thing. But when you think you're losing your faith, then it's like somebody pressing the erase button you go back to zero. So every foundation that you laid has collapsed. And you don't know where to go. And this happened after my twin's death in December of 2000, when she was killed in a car accident. That knocked me, man. I didn't care if I lived or died. And I was no use to my family. I couldn't carry anybody else's grief. I couldn't carry the kids' grief. Because I was too broken. I'd never known pain like it. You'll never recover.
So
you
Margaret
learn
was
to live with it.
Margaret was your twin sister. She died at the age of
41
in a traffic accident just outside Loughrea.
on the 3rd of December.
And she left 3 children. What ages were the children?
The twins were 15 and Patrick was 12. But Margaret's lovely lad, but Margaret's husband had died 9 years earlier by suicide when Patrick was 3 and the twins were 7. So I took a far more major role with Margaret then.
But this period of your life had to have questioned your beliefs, your faith.
Yeah, my faith was tested to the, as I said, I was in Rome. I've been in Rome since October 99, studying canon law at the Pontifical Gregorian University. And I got the call at 1 o'clock in the morning, but I had 2 premonitions. That was on Sunday. On the previous Friday and previous Wednesday, I woke from a terrible dream, the door opening, and I knew something was going to happen, something terrible. And I shared it with one of the staff of the college, who was a friend of mine too, and I said, I have a terrible fear of impending tragedy, and it's going to be awful. I don't know if it's going to be Margaret or my mother. And we talked about it, and that night, that Sunday, we went back to the college, and I felt a bit more at ease. And then I got the call 2 hours later. So the big decisions had to be made. Some decisions we made were good, some were, in hindsight, were not good for the kids. But sure, none of us were thinking right at all, and we had nobody to step in to help us to think right either. I realised that later. But yeah, I mean, I went back to Rome. It was...
What supports did you have?
I had none.
How was the bishop?
None. No. A college is a very lonely place when you're in grief. It's a and it's not just the Catholic Church and college, any university. You have points to meet for projects and so forth. And that didn't change, and the bishop was wonderful. When I said I had no support from the bishop, I was in Rome. But the bishop said, look, whatever it takes, don't feel pressured. If you don't want to continue, don't. Come back home, and if you want to go back, you can go back. So
how long were you gone from Loughrea at this stage to Rome?
I'd left Loughrea in 92. I went to Bullen, lovely little country parish just outside Loughrea.
I still consider Bullen Loughrea, but
yeah, that's you.
They would be very happy with
No, yeah. And so I was now 2 years gone. I was in Rome.
And how long more had you?
2 years.
2 years. So you're halfway through.
Yes, I left Bullen in 98. I went to Galway for a year in the marriage tribunal offices, and then went to Rome. That's 2 years. And then did the 2 years for the license in law. But again, it's interesting that the most profound moment of my life in faith for priesthood was St. Peter's Square on the 15th of February 73, when it was raining, and I came out and I said, I'm going to be a priest. And here I was in St. Peter's Square again on Palm Sunday, 2001, with St. Pope John Paul II. And between Palm Sunday and returning in January, I could not bear to hear a priest talk about the love of God. I couldn't bear it. It was like somebody was hammering me with nails and everything else you could throw at me. I was so angry. I was so confused, and I didn't study. I didn't eat. I remember one day I called this friend of mine. I said, "Can we talk for a second?" And I said to him, "I'm really petrified." I said, "I think I can lose my priesthood." I said, "I think I'm losing my faith." That's going. No. He glibly dismissed it, and uncharacteristically, as you would know me, I lost it. I was so furious. I said, "I've just shared something extremely important, and you've just dismissed it glibly." That really shocked him. "Let's go for a walk." For the next 7 hours, we walked the streets of Rome. And I poured out. And I was aching so much. I didn't know what to do. And my prayer was empty. Nothing meant anything to me. So I went to St. Peter's because I needed the help with Holy Communion with the massive crowds. And the psalm came, my God, why have you forsaken me or deserted me?" But it's in Italian. And this guy sings in such a way, it's nearly like the Shanos. Dio mio, perché hai abbandonato? And he sang it, Dio mio, perché hai abbandonato? Well, it was such a profound moment that this warmth inside me just came all through my body. Just this heat inside me, all to my face. I was trying to hold it back because I didn't want anybody seeing me. And the poor Pope himself, sure, he was not in great health. And when he had finished, I knew I was going to be fine. It's like a whole weight went off my shoulders. And suddenly I felt this freshness. I walked out of the square a different person. Here we are again, St. Peter's, and a profound moment. From 13 to 42. And I went back to the college, and even my friend, Paul, could see there was a difference, something had happened. It was the beginning of my recovery. Never getting over it, but learning to live with it. And that's why I hate this closure, as if it's a business deal. There is no closure in grief. There never will be. What you do is you learn to live with it, adapt both the grief and yourself, and let it not make you bitter. But your faith tells you you're not destined for the ground, but the ground is going to hand you back to God. So you learn to live, not as a burden. In time, this pain is personal to you now, and nobody can take it away. That was the biggest thing I learned. That pain in the heart, that when I speak, I get emotion. That's Margaret reminded me, I won't be letting you forget me, boy. No way. That's her place. Nobody enters, that's her place. So this awfulness of crushing now becomes a protection, that I know then that she's with me. And now the recovery can begin.
And I know you as a very compassionate and forgiving man, and I can understand how your own faith would have been, questioned at that time. I suppose you had another big loss in your life, which when the death of your mother, because your mother had moved to Loughrea with you, really, and she'd followed your journey as a priest. She was your rock. Um, she died in what year?
Mum died on the 3rd of September 18.
And she probably was broken-hearted with Margaret as well. And
it took many years for Mum and I to have some conversation about this. And Mum and I, when I came back from Rome and went into Galway, like the kids were living with Mum at that point, and Mum was rearing them, and I looked after the discipline and the money things and so forth. And then Mum would bounce off me every Friday for the first couple of years. After I came home, it was our time, and Mum's frustrations with the kids and so forth. And one night we went out and Mum wasn't bouncing off me. I thought, what's wrong here? Suddenly, Mum had adjusted as well to rearing a second family. And we love the kids, and but they're teenagers, and we typical problems like any guardians and parents. And, I was learning on the hoof because as I said, I inherited this.
You'd gone from overnight from being a priest
An uncle,
and your mother being a grandmother to.
Well, I wasn't the priest to them. I was the uncle.
You were the uncle, but suddenly you were the father figure, and your mother was the mother figure in a time of their lives where they are very vulnerable.
Yes.
And
we were the authority figure.
Yeah. What was your mother's faith like up to that, and how was her faith during all this?
I can't speak about that because I don't know it, but my mother, before I was ordained, Mum was going to Mass, and it wasn't because of me, but I think Mum was so busy with everything. But then she found that she wanted to make time again. So she would, and Mum was always very positive about the church and very supportive. And very supportive of me as a priest in a quiet way. Never asked me any questions or anything. Never wanted to seem to be imposing. But you would always talk if you wanted to. Just a couple of times I did when I reached some difficult things, and Mum would look at me, then she'd know there's something really wrong. And she'd say, if you want to talk, it's fine. But a lot of the time I didn't want to burden her, either. And Mum's faith was strong. She had deep faith. There's no doubt about that. My mum was like Mum. My mother had a great sense of humour. My mother had a black sense of humour too. And give you an idea, I was 21 going up to see Granny Bannon in Sacred Heart Nursing Home. And Granny was ill at this stage. Well, now I look back, she was dying, right? And Mum was going up. And one of the nurses, I was going behind my mother now, says, and your mother said, and your son going on for the priesthood? Ah, yeah, he was always a little odd. But Mum, if Mum hadn't been there, things would have been so much worse for us all. But one night we did get talking, and it was a bit, in grief, tension in family is really heightened. And I say this to grieving couples and families, that there will be tension, because you see, you're full of grief. You're not able to take your child's grief or your mother's grief because your barrel is full and it's spilling over. And in grief, in the early days, you empty out the barrel in tears for it to only fill up again. So you might think that your mother doesn't care that you're grieving as the twin, or the twin is not concerned that she's grieving as the loss of her daughter and siblings. So there is tension. And that was true of our house. And you felt that you weren't recognised in your grief. That my grief was different to my brothers. And they were living, one was in New Zealand and Barry was across the river. At that time I was living in Loughrea. And we got talking one night and I said, Mum, would you not recognise I grieve as a twin, not as a brother? And Mum stopped for a minute, and Mum was always a very humble woman, And she said, I never thought of it like that. Of course, she said. I said, but Ma, you grieve for her as your daughter, and I don't understand what that's like. And that really cleared the decks for us both. We didn't need to say any more. So when Mam got sick, and Mam wasn't sick for too long, I was taken by surprise. She hid from me how ill she was. And pulmonary fibrosis she had, but in 17 she went to hospital in the August and she had clots in her lungs. And I got the call, I was at a wedding, I came up and, yeah, fine, clearing it up, it's fine. And then she went again and I'd say, oh, it's scar tissue, she'd say. You know, I'm going to see the doctor. I say, scar tissue, what does that mean now? You see? So I didn't understand this in 17, early 18. And then Mam got sick, I was at a wedding again. And I came straight up then from Kilkenny after doing the wedding for the parishioner. And there she was, and it was the lungs. And Michael Henchy, who's been part of our life, he came to work for my father when I was 14. He's with us ever since. And he said, oh, your mother's in hospital, always understating things. Oh, why? Oh, something with her lungs. But sure, her lungs are fine. So up I came anyway. How are you, ma? Blah, blah, blah. And don't be fussing now. And the consultant came and took me outside, and I'm her son. You know, blah, blah, blah. And she said, and he's pulmonary fibrosis. And I said, I thought it was only cystic fibrosis. That's how ignorant I was. I thought there was only cystic fibrosis in the world. You're born with it. Oh no, she said, there's many different types of fibrosis. And she looked at me and said, you haven't a clue about this, have you? I went, no. Your mother has had this condition for quite some time. I said, she was here in hospital, I said, last August, that's right, with clots in her lungs. That was the beginning of the pulmonary fibrosis. And then I felt like a heel then, you see, because nobody told me. But Althea, which is Margaret's eldest daughter, one of the twins, Mam did say to her, and Althea's now 40 since last January, but told not to say a word to me. So she was protecting me all the time. And we came to it. And this time, Mam was 81, and 3 months before she died, on the 3rd of June, with photographs taken with Althea's eldest lad who made his confirmation, Mam looks around 65, right? Great day. She kept on living, and Mam loved life, and we'd always have a drink on a Friday night together. When Michael retired and came to stay with us, I was surplus to requirement from 26 to 2015. Yeah. Didn't mind, because I always wanted Mam to have her independence, that I wouldn't be a surrogate husband. And when it came to it, Mam and I, we talked. We talked about, I mean, we knew she had a short time to live, and I remember the Saturday morning before she died on the Monday, before I sat down. Now about the funeral, I want no nonsense. I thought she was talking about crying or something. No photograph, none of this symbol stuff, no flowers. That's flowers are for the living, prayers are for the dead, just like Granny Bannon. I said, I know, Maya. Well, I'm telling you now. I said, I know. I said, I want that too. Do you? As much as say, I want the big show. So Mam's death, while it was really hard on me and I cried enough, it had nothing of the trauma and tragedy that we had with my dad dying young within a month from oat cell cancer, and Mum really struggled, for a while after that, because we didn't know Dad was so sick. But I was 35 when he died, 2 days after our birthday in 94, and Mam was in her 50s. Yeah. And then Margaret, and then my uncles all died tragically. So this was, as even Jared, when they got in from New Zealand, said, this was our first ordinary, normal grief, death. Mam helped us. Yeah. And Mam was content. And she had no fear whatsoever. Told us she all loved us, we loved her, all of that. And she wanted no eulogy. Nothing. She said, everybody that's there knows me.
Simple funeral.
Simple funeral. The one I want. And at the grave, the humour came out. Because we had never done this before in Mount Pleasant. And it was lovely. I got my classmates to say the prayers and just the family around me. So it came then, we asked the boys, as you know, the lads, the grave diggers up there, could we do the first of it, you know, which wouldn't be normal, right? But of course, Father Mick, no problem at all. So anyway, we went to go, and Jared had a tiny shovel, my brother, they went down for me, and he said, here, gave me a little shovel with the clay. And when I did it, get out of the way now, let the men do the rest, he says. And they got the big spades. Everybody took their turn.
And that kind of brings me to, like, one of my favourite books is Anna Cara, Janet Jones.
Yes.
So Soul Friend.
Soul Friend.
So where do you think your mother and Margaret are now? Like, what, not so much what you're teaching, but what's your belief as Father Michael Byrne? As Michael Byrne, what's your...
I accept the belief of the teachings of the church as Michael. No pope, no bishop, no title determines what I believe personally, in the sense that the dogma, the teaching comes from Christ himself, and that the Pope and the teaching is correct, but I'm not doing it because they say it. I'm doing it because I heard it first in the gospel. Here there are many rooms of my father. He uses imagery, many rooms of my father's house. If they're not all, I would have told you. So I came to a conclusion when Margaret died, and when the trauma had eased to the point that I could think and be able to talk about the love of God, which by the way took quite a number of years. I'd never said it for maybe 6 years. People say, oh, I feel them very close to me. Do you go to the grave? I'm sure you feel very close to Margaret. I felt the Arctic Ocean around me. Nothing. And I began to wonder, is there something wrong with me? I tried to fabricate it in my mind, in my heart, to make emotion, but I couldn't, and I stopped. So looking at the graves of my parents are here, and Margaret is above there, and please God, that's where I lie with her. I realised that more questions to ask, and this has influenced my ministry hugely. And the question was, what am I feeling too? Why do I feel I need the need to feel? Is it for me or is it whatever? So I accepted, I don't feel the closeness, but I don't feel the absence. And I've come to accept in myself. I was very, as I said, close to my grandmother as well, Granny Bannon. There's not a day or 3 or 4 days where I will not think of Granny, because she was such an influence on my teenage years, and she had a very difficult time. Like, Grandad died January 30th, and then on the 16th of March, Grandad's daughter, Sarah Ann, Mam's younger sister, died of meningitis. In that period, Granny was left with a husband gone, a daughter gone. Ireland this was in 1950, and Granny was stoic, and strong. Mam would feel very deeply, and emotions she wouldn't like to show, but she couldn't bear too much emotion physically. I think because she feels the floodgates had opened, and all of that I watched, I've seen the care that my parents gave to my grandparents. My father said, if children see the care that their parents give to their parents, they'll learn it too. He was right. So I came to the conclusion a long time ago, if the most perfect human being was never caught out in a lie, why shouldn't I trust him to ask me to trust him in his promises? That in my Father's house there are many rooms that I thought I should have told you. It's an invitation to trust. I don't know what heaven is like. I don't have any special kind of, I would just say, like a submarine with the periscope coming up and having a little look. None of that. I believe that where we're going is a place that's prepared for us. And that if we live life even with our fragility, even with our weaknesses, but we strive to truly, as Christians, put into action what Christ asks of us. So it's not taking from humanity, it's actually complementing humanity. So if you do good to another, there's a double blessing. The blessing of enjoyment for doing it for a fellow human being, and you're blessed spiritually and by God as an act of devotion to Him. Whatever you do to the least of my brethren, you do to me. There's your connection. And I believe that Margaret is there, and Dad, I do not believe for one moment, and it used to frighten the life out of me as a kid, when I see angels flying around playing harps, and I said, are we going to do that for all eternity? It didn't appeal to me, you know? So I have no idea, but if the Lord brought such life to so many in His time on earth to reveal something of what is awaiting us in the kingdom, I'm looking forward not knowing what it'll be like, because I think it's going to be exciting.
So, for yourself then, you said it earlier, you set goals as such. Your own achievements for yourself over the years, can you say, or do you have something that stands out as a really special achievement in your life?
That I've been blessed to be able to be part of so many people's lives in the most precious moments of their life, whether it be the baptism, their wedding, a funeral of their loved one, and to be totally accepted, and they feeling that your presence is a huge help to helping them enjoy, and also to help them to cope with grief, and that you're just walking with them. Because out of those occasions there have been other events that are more quiet and private, and the persons have felt totally at ease to ring you and come and chat you. They think they know me more than they actually do, but they feel that I think the greatest gift that God has given me, my father had it too, my man, is to be open and just to share yourself and give time to people.
How about a goal for the future? Is that to continue in that way, or? I know that's probably a given. But at a personal level, have you any goals? Is there something you'd like to achieve over the next 40 years?
Well, I definitely won't be here 40 years, that's for sure. I'll be the oldest person in the world. Well, I suppose I'm coming to the evening of life, and I am grateful for one thing, as I've already said, that whatever has been in life, my own regrets or disappointments or feeling I should have done this or maybe did that better, it is not kicked out of me my love for life. That even though I'll at times at Christmas, when I hear certain Christmas songs, whatever, I get emotional, but it's not crying because I'm sad. It's gratitude that I had those memories in the first place. And that's what I'm so grateful for, and having that love of life. I suppose I'd love to come to a point now in the not too distant future where I can step down from my public ministerial role to retire while I'm still in good health and spend more time, say, yes, with my family, you know, but they'll be teenagers, so they won't see me coming too often. But I mean, having time to do things that I would like to do but can't do because I'm so restrained by my responsibilities as a pastor. So to have the freedom to choose what I want to do. If I want to go away for 3 months down to Jordan, New Zealand, I just go. I don't have to be finding people to cover for ministry. That's done. So my goal is to enjoy the evening to the twilight of my life, hoping my goal of having a clear mind, reasonable health, a family and friends around, that I can still enjoy life, have the drink with my friends, and not talk about the past, but talk about what's going on now, and looking to talk about their future.
And just as a conclusion, for anybody that's listening and watching to this, do you have any advice on people that maybe are finding themselves in moments of maybe disillusionment or grief, or is there anything you could say to people with all that's going on in the world? I suppose it's easy to get disillusioned with life. People can become very lonely and isolated. Is there anything you can say to those people? Is it faith? Is it prayer? Or what is it, in your opinion, could help them? So this
is the photograph taken on the 3rd of June 2018, and it was our Oisin's confirmation. That was 2 years ago for my 40th anniversary of my ordination, and that Barry is having his arm around me, my youngest brother, and that's his son Jack, and they came up from New Zealand, sorry.
Yeah.
Kids. Oh, stop it now. Maisie, Cooper, and Ruby.
So Althea is one of the twins. That's Margaret's eldest. Yeah, very good.
Margaret would buy me things like that.
Right. Okay.
And Margaret got me that when I was in my 20s.
And so this is Margaret here.
That's Margaret. That was taken on Monday, and Margaret died the following Sunday. When I went to Rome in 1973, that first visit, I bought this and I bought that. I go back to something about when Mum was dying, and I was naturally upset. You know, you're always broken-hearted when your ma's going, no matter how old you are. But a person gave me advice, which I thought was amazing. She said, stay close to your family and grieve with your friends. Very wise. Because your friends can take on board your grief for a while, but don't wear them out. Don't wear their generosity of spirit out either. But they will. So when you're emptying out the barrel in grief and it's filling up again, eventually the barrel will be half full, but the barrel will become smaller, because you're moving from grief, hopefully, to gratitude. I'm disillusioned at times with the horrific situation that's going on in Gaza, the Ukraine, and I'm angry about it. But I've learned if we're disillusioned, it means we care. We care. So being disillusioned is not a negative all of itself. There's a positivity there. Where does that come from? So that means within us, there is a genuine striving to make a better world around ourselves, with others as well. So staying close to friends, talking about what you have now, as I said, in the generosity of our celebrations at Mass, let's keep a mind to Gaza, to Ukraine, who would give anything for a slither of the peace, the community, the joy, the safety that we feel and are living ourselves. But this wouldn't be here but for us. We have to nurture this at home and nourish it and teach our young people. Because if we're disillusioned, then you go to despair, and despair is going into hell. Disillusionment should make us determined that in my patch where I can make a difference, I will be the positive, I will be the loving person, I will help the one that needs that help, that smile that may not be given by another. That faith helps us to be generous, because it's also an act of devotion to God. Spirituality is personal thing, that you spiritualize, you try to take something out that's around you, bring it into yourself. Faith is the opposite. Faith is within you that reaches out to put into practice what a being, a higher power, God, Allah, has asked us to do, because it totally complements good. If you live out the tenet of a faith, the commandments and so forth, it only leads to stability, to goodness, to kindness, to growth. If you weary away, then we go in on ourselves with ambition, hatred, all these other things. That's sin, that's evil, whatever you want to call it. It's trying to unsettle our good and to break it down, because they don't want it to exist. I believe that the Lord wants us, first of all, to look to each other and recognize the Christ in each other. Because if you cannot worship Christ in Holy Communion and not give the same reverence to the person beside you or behind you who's about to receive the same Christ. Love God, love neighbour, it's the one coin, the two sides. You can't split the coin. If you declare your love of God, you are declaring your love of your human being, your fellow human being. Therefore, being disillusioned should make us more determined to bring ourselves back on the path that draws people back into that goodness, into feeling alive, because we share ourselves with each other.
Father Michael Byrne, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for your time. I'm going to put you on the spot. Father Michael Byrne was always known for his singing. Would you, as maybe a blessing to everyone, would you give us something in Latin maybe? Or whatever, just...
Well, the ancient form is still in English now, the blessing in Latin, but when it's sung or chanted, it's very powerful, and it just says, "May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." That Trinity, that relationship with each other, may that be for you a relationship with each other, a blessing that there is unity and diversity in unity, and unity in diversity. That's it, sir. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
Thank you very much. So this is
St. Martin de Porres that Dad had to bring to London when he went over to see Granny. And as I said, I wrote on the bottom of it, and there it is.
Read that out for me.
It's a statue of St. Martin de Porres OP. It was a present from Granny Bannon. Dad brought it back from Ireland for me on Sunday the 26th of September 1976, but I got it the next day.
I'd say your father was delighted bring that through customs.